أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. So, alhamdulillah, this is another monthly discussion for Maqasid Institute Economics Discussion Group, discussion that is in the research group, rather. And I'll be presenting today. My name is Ildus Ravikov, and I'm a Deputy Executive Director at Maqasid Institute. And the topic of this discussion today is what I've given here is methodology of economics in search of a right approach to the dismal science. So this is the title, and I guess I would need to give a little explanation for those who maybe watch this video afterwards, or for everyone watching right now. So those who studied economics, they would have heard this term, dismal science, many times. This is how Thomas Carlyle, the 19th century Scottish historian and philosopher, he described the study of economics. At that time, it was political economy. And basically, the dismal science would mean something miserable or hopeless science. And in fact, this remark was in regard to the emancipation of slaves, which obviously Thomas Carlyle he didn't like. He really disliked that, and he wanted the reintroduction of slave trade. And so, but in general, around the middle of 19th century, the view about the study of political economy was not really a happy science, or sometimes they would say gay science at that time, happy science. So it wasn't that a happy science, because at that time the idea of this exponential population growth and this Malthusian the model of population growth, it was really kind of gloomy, and everywhere in the world, not everywhere, but in the main powers, like in England, for example, there was a really huge population growth, and in other countries, in other places in Europe, and so there was quite. It was posing a lot of challenges to population, to governments, to businesses. So they didn't know how to approach this. But today we can see that we are more than 7 billion people, and of course, in some places the population is an issue. The huge population is an issue. In other places, the underpopulation is another issue. And so anyway, the topic today is about the methodology for the discipline of economics. So I want to make a couple of disclaimers. Number one is that I'm not a trained economist, so you may find something that maybe I will not touch as another trained economist would do. And so, and also the main ideas presented here were developed over 6 years ago, which some of them I have changed, not with regards to the integrated, but I would say the ideas and the understanding I developed out of this from the time I joined the Maqasid Institute, and I read the book and I follow the teacher, our Sheikh, Dr. Jasir Ouda. So since then, of course, I have changed some of these ideas a little bit, and maybe even quite a bit, I would say. And so before I start the actual presentation, I'm going to conduct a little quiz here. So everyone who has here present, you can open your mics. You can open your microphones, and just tell me what is common for all these three. what did these scholars have in common?
Well, I know. I want to give others the chance to say.
Yeah. So please, others, join me. Join us. Try to let's think. What do they have in common?
Can I say something?
Yes, of course. Just it's open. Just open and go ahead. Speak.
I'm Hafiza. I would say that if Aristotle is more on philosophical ideas or concept, and then Ibn Sina is more like a doctor. Okay, and also, if I'm not mistaken, he's also a religious hadith, if I'm not mistaken. But Galileo, I'm not sure of that. But I can see here mathematician and physics.
Okay, so what do they have in common?
They are philosophers.
They are philosophers.
Okay, anyone else? Islamic worldview. Well, what do you think? Well, Aris. Any other ideas? Okay. Now, the answer. Dr. Jasmine, do you want to try?
Well, they mastered moral disciplines. They were polymaths, right?
Okay,
I didn't see the slides. I swear, I didn't see the slides.
Because, of course, I didn't share it with you. So that's the... they mastered different disciplines, multiple disciplines. SubhanAllah, this not only those three, but many other scholars of the past, they mastered many, sometimes even unrelated disciplines. Like astronomy and pharmacology, for example, or mathematics and astronomy would be very close. But theology and astronomy, jurisprudence and medicine. So this kind, and of course the botany and physics. So these people, they managed. They were really encyclopedic. And so in this presentation today, inshallah, I'll try to cover 4 topics. So I'll start with the methodology and its relevance to the science today. Then I'll outline the ideas of some ideas on Islamic perspective on methodology that from my understanding, and I developed these ideas over the course of my PhD, and later on they've developed into the. Of course, I use some ideas from our teachers, our scholars that came before us. And so I'll talk about maybe a little bit about the integrated knowledge and 2 readings approach. And then I'll propose an idea of interdisciplinary methodology for economics. And lastly, I present a plan for how to apply the Maqasid methodology in my research. So here in number 4, I'll try just to outline what I'm going to do, what is the topic I'll be writing, and what I'm going to do next in the couple of maybe 2-3 months using the Maqasid methodology. And so the first topic is methodology and what it is and how it is relevant to science. And again, so this is something that I developed over a few years, especially during my doctorate studies, but also something that I also looked at. I started noticing, of course, during my not master's degree, but the certificate, professional certificate in Islamic finance that I did at INSIF in Malaysia. And So gradually, I came to appreciate the concept of methodology. And here, let me start with this picture. I really like it. I always start my classes on epistemology and in methodology class at the institute where I teach at the IKI Academy. And this really signifies the different perspectives that we can take and look at the same issue, but have different view, different understanding of what it is. So we can look at from this side as just a circle, from another side as it's a square, and from the top to bottom it is a triangle. But what it is not any of these three, but the reality is completely different. So it is the same in many issues and many things that we encounter in our lives today. And whether it is in politics and economics, in health, for example, we went to a hospital with my son for migraine, and one way would be for the doctor just to prescribe some painkillers and just let us go. But luckily, the doctor didn't do that, and the doctors decided to do some tests. So several tests they've done, and so this basically shows that this view, or this multiple view, or the integrated view of things, issues, events, challenges, problems, is really this kind of view is really this kind of perspective is important, and it's very significant in whether it is in scientific work or in writing, in our daily lives, and so on. And so this word methodology is mainly used by scholars and students, especially when writing research papers or theses. And in science, it is simply a systematic approach to thinking about an actual process. About the actual process of research, the methods, the tools and procedures together, and analyze the data. It is simply a kind of systematic thinking or logical reasoning about an activity before engaging in it, like in research, for example. Or simply, we can simply state that it is, we can have this word like approach or perspective. So for many issues, problems and challenges, there may be more than one way of finding a solution. And likewise in science, especially in human sciences, there may be more than one way to look at the problem. And so researchers can apply different methodologies. So for example, scarcity is a fundamental problem in economics. And one methodology would be to observe scarcity of certain goods in the market and state the fact of its existence using statistics without going into reasons of its occurrence. And even if you go into reasons like cause and effect, will you cover all the causes and effects of scarcity? And science would be maybe looking at it in a models, economic models would be looking at it in a kind of limited way. And so another approach could be to study the fiqh or jurisprudence of goods, distribution of goods and services within the economy, to identify the failure of policies or laws. And so hence the to study one topic, different approaches could be taken, even within one discipline. And so you see that I've brought a few definitions of what methodology is. And this definition here by Rita Dust is actually a good definition that he he wrote a good paper, not a book. It was printed by IUM Press, and the book called Methodology of Economics, Secular versus Islamic. I think some of you may have seen this book by Walid Addas. So if you are studying economics and you are interested in methodology, so I really recommend this book. And now the importance of methodology. It is important in science because it establishes the framework of systematic thinking, and it also establishes the methods of inquiry, the methods that are required to achieve the goals of research. And through methodology, we see the logic of the work. We see logic of procedures, the analysis. And so it just reveals how complex or simple the research is going to be, or is. If we look at the published work already. And so whether the chosen method and procedures are appropriate for the scope of intended research. So you can, you see, when we submit papers, let's say for scientific, for the scientific journals, they would look at the methodology. So one of those things, and even today there is a new way to structure the abstract, because you're supposed to send the abstract first. And so there will be like the purposes, the methodology, and the value of work, and so on. So the methodology stands out in even in abstracts. If you have to write an abstract for a scientific article. And so the scope of methodology, there are, when discussing methodology, scholars usually discuss how scientific research is by looking at its fundamental approach, whether it is positive or normative. And so it is, especially in exact sciences, it would be more like a positive approach. And if anyone wants to, especially from the neoclassical perspective, if you want to appear really scientific, then this is the methodology to take, positive methodology. And so what it means is basically it also what kind of methodology, this positive versus normative. So positive is something that describes what it is right now. It's mostly based on observations and experimentation. And the normative approach is something that is what should be. And so the scope of methodology is also to establish the methods of inquiry, like observation, experimentation, demonstration, and others, and the methods of analysis, which can be deduction, induction, quantitative or qualitative approaches. And the results of inquiry, whether they can be falsified or verified, or we can use validation or confirmation. And so I think actually the most difficult out of this is to falsify. I mean, the person who writes the scientific paper or a book or an approach, according to Karl Popper, that the science is supposed to try and falsify what is, try to disprove what you're trying to show. Any topic that you're writing on, you're trying to, if you try to disprove it, then it is going to be a better approach to methodology. But many a time we use verification or validation. We just look at the data. We build the model, whether it is in maybe econometric model, and see how the data maybe fit into it. So we try to validate the model, or to really disprove that model and try to come up with a different one, or maybe amend or change that model. And the methodology can also be used to differentiate between science and pseudoscience. And of course, there are many different schools of thought, and all of them have their methodological differences. And now there are as many methodologies as there are schools of thought in economics. And so there is neoclassical, there is new neoclassical, there is Keynesian, there is Marxian, there is Austrian, there is German historic school, there are other heterodox, there is even ecological school, there is female economic school. And so all of them, they have their own methods, their own approaches to economics. And so, but the mainstream methodology of logical positivism, as far as I know, is connected with empiricism, which is the idea that all true knowledge can only be obtained through observation or through the sense experience. And this is what really makes the scientific method, and we will look at it right now. So, and what is scientific method is the systematic process of observation, formulation of hypothesis, testing the hypothesis against facts, and developing theories and others. So this is the cycle of the scientific method as how it is supposed to look, the normal process of science. So you make an observation, whether it is the observation in nature or you read a paper, you disagree with something, you look at the certain phenomena, then you observe it, you think about it, you formulate some questions about it, and then if you are scientifically inclined, then you want to find a solution to these questions, and so you start to formulate hypotheses based on your worldview, based on your background and your own understanding, and then you develop the testable predictions, and then you gather data to test those predictions, and you may have to redefine, refine, alter, expand, just to change the hypothesis. And then you develop your general theory, and so you publish it, or you publish as an article or a book, and then somebody else takes up maybe the same or similar idea that you have written about, or they take interest in that area, and so they continue with this cycle. And so this is the cycle of the scientific method. And so the methodology of conventional economics, as I said, it is based on logical positivism, which means that the research within this stream must follow the established methodology, emphasizing the quantitative approach using econometrics to test hypotheses or theories. It's not necessary, but it is. It just shows that it's going to be more robust for the conventional economics. And if you use mathematical modeling, it looks really good for journals, for scientific journals which deal in which publish specifically in economics. And so economics can be an objective science, according to Milton Friedman and other scientists before that, just like any other physical sciences. And because it deals with what is and what not ought to be. And it also supposed to be independent from normative judgments or ethical positions. And so the problems with positivist approach is that the empirical statements are not universally true, and they cannot be universally verified. And you see there is also, they're based on simple assumptions with few variables, And this is the topic which is very important, and I think maybe our discussant may also mention this later on. But the question, or the question of assumptions in science is very important, because it will from this question you really you base all your approach, you base all your the methods that you use, and the assumptions are going to really affect the results of your research, and so. But any research is influenced by the worldview of the researcher, and so the scientific statements are not truly devoid of subjectivity or value system. So when we say, empirical statements, but then if you base your this cycle, if you base on certain assumptions, then it's going to be already it's going to be, to a certain extent, it's going to be subjective. And so, and another problem is the problem of induction. And it has been studied, I think, to a large extent. Also, the problem of induction, for example, by Bertrand Russell. He wrote in his book Inquiry into the Meaning and Truth, and in there he actually refuted empiricism, stating that all knowledge derives from sense experience. And but it cannot be proven by itself, and so he says that it is logically inconsistent and denies a priori knowledge. And also from the epistemology, we can state that there is a problem of justification. You see, in science, in epistemology, we talk about the knowledge and also the justification of knowledge. And so, in order for empirical statements to be considered as true knowledge, then you have to come up with something to support a proof. You need proof or evidence. But you'll have to also what about that evidence? I mean, that you are using. Do you need to use another evidence to support that evidence? I mean, there is this idea of regression problem, or the problem of regress in epistemology, and so the idea of maybe an Islamic approach, or how to say a more holistic approach, I think. I would really omit this word Islamic, because I think we really need to look at things from a holistic perspective. Because once we use this word, then we try to stand out of the whole humanity. But then I see that there are some approaches that can be considered universal. But of course, I'll also touch upon the Islamic kind of approach, or the approach used based on the Quran and Sunnah. And so the science is not strictly positive, because all scholars or researchers are influenced by their personal worldviews. And so, let's say if a Muslim, let's say myself, I studied at the International Islamic University in Malaysia. I lived in Malaysia for quite a while, and so I have, and also before coming to Malaysia, I was brought up during the Soviet Union times. So all my background, it does affect how I look at things, whether it is in economics or in other areas of knowledge or of science. And so the science stems from the sources of knowledge, and and it depends what kind of source of knowledge you accept. Let's say if you accept that there is only the perception, the perceptive kind of the sense perception, and then you're really limiting yourself to those to only that kind of source of knowledge, and then your analysis is going to be really limited. It's going to be really limited to that source of knowledge. But we know that from the Islamic perspective, we see that there are two types. There are two types of knowledge. One is the revealed knowledge, and another one is existential. So the revealed knowledge is the Quran and Sunnah, and the existential knowledge is the knowledge about the universe derived from observation, deduction, experimentation, from the common sense also. And the two sources of knowledge combined are referred to as the two readings by Professor Taha Jaber Al-Alwani. And there are other approaches similar approaches to this, which, for example, IIIT looks at it as the integrated knowledge, or the integration of knowledge approach. I know that the prior to integration of knowledge, there was this idea of Islamization or Islamicization of knowledge. So there are different kind of terms used for this. And but here at the Maqasid Institute, of course, we want to move beyond this and offer maybe another level of integrated approach, which is the Maqasidi approach, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Now, how much time do I have, or do I still have time? Dr. Loni?
Yeah, you still have the time, Dr. Ildus.
Okay, all right. So basically, this is the ayah from Surah Al-Ma'idah. So unto every one of you have we appointed a law and a way of life. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word shira and minhaj. The first word's literal meaning is the way to a watering place, which can be understood as a way to something or someone that gives life. And minhaj means a clear path or way. So both of these words are actually also signify a path or a way. And so the technical meaning, as explained by some scholars, is for the first word, shira, is some scholars say that this is the Quran, and minhaj probably refers to the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But there is also a view that the first word denotes the revealed knowledge, and the second existential knowledge. So this is the probably essence of the Islamic methodology. So which is the combination of the revealed and the existential. And so we also know the ayah from the Quran about the أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم في آفاق وفي أنفسهم, and we will show them our signs in the universe and within themselves. So basically, the ayats here, the ayats are not only the ayat of the Quran, but also the ayats in the greater in the universe around us and within us. So this is like kind of the two readings approach. And so there are different words that are used in the Arabic language to denote the method. So we can see the words like Sabil, Sarat, Tariq, Sunnah, and some other. So and here are some of the ayats from the Quran. And the holistic view of knowledge. So the Islamic methodology is based on the combined reading of the revealed and the existential knowledge, and this is why Sheikh Al-Alwani calls this approach as the two readings. This methodology permeated the Islamic scholarship from the very beginning, And as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, early Muslim scholars mastered multiple sciences. But narrow specialization in scholarship is the product of industrialization and also the consumer and the product of consumer capitalism. Islamic civilization instead was built on the idea of Tawheed, which points to the single source of all knowledge. And the significance of this, of Tawheed, is that we understand that everything comes from, all knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source of all knowledge in the universe. And we see the connectedness. That's the key word, I think, is the interconnectedness of all the science in the universe, of everything in the universe, and they're all connected to the Creator, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the truth about this world can only be understood through combined reading of the divine revelation and the book of nature. And so a holistic view of knowledge is the correct methodology of science in Islam. And we can use different methods like deduction, induction, experimentation, demonstration, and other methods. And now the problems with methodology in Islamic economics is that there is a problem of dichotomy between Islamic scholars and between academic economists and the practitioners also. And academic methodology for Islamic economics is it's Sharia based, and it is with an emphasis on fiqh and also the conventional economics method. And for practitioners, it is more a Sharia compliance approach, which is the main methodology of financial innovation in Islamic financial institutions. And Sharia compliance approach is designed to mimic the conventional methodology and its effects. And integrated methodology of research and innovation, I think, is the solution. And this way we can move on to this understanding or the practice of collective ijtihad. Whereby we see that the scholars of 1,000 years or 2,000 years, they were really encyclopedic because they mastered different sciences. But today it would be very difficult to master all the sciences because of the sheer amount of information and knowledge that is being created every day. And so there needs to be a collective ijtihad, collective thinking, collective approach to sciences, to finding solutions. And so the proposed methodology, this is something that I developed during my PhD thesis, and this chart consists of three sections here. So one here, I look at the left side is the main objective, is the promotion of well-being. So whenever we think, let's say, we think of a solution, we start by thinking of the well-being first, that we want to promote well-being and happiness of people. So, and I was actually looking at this as one of the main Maqasid the objectives of Sharia. And also here at the center, I stated some sciences that that we look at some at issues by looking at as a combination of like Sharia sciences and human or social sciences, using some guiding principles. And of course, there we can also use some auxiliary sciences like maybe ICT or some natural sciences. Especially this is if we are talking about the some issues in like social issues, economic issues, and so on. And here are some guiding principles, and I would really refer you back to my article, so you can read more about this. And so I won't take too much time really going through all of this. And the explanation here is that the base is the most important as it deals with the worldview. The base here, I mean this one, because it deals with the worldview and the acceptance of the ultimate objective of Sharia. And hence the methodology is built upon this Sharia base. And of course, the base of the Sharia, of course, is the Quran and the Sunnah. So we'll have to, anyone who wants to write or do research in this area from an Islamic perspective, they have to look at this at the Quran and Sunnah and take them as the basis, as the fundamental source of knowledge there. And so the collective ijtihad is possible at the level of educational institutions, research institutes, government agencies, so between people, researchers, and so collaborative work has to be open enough for people to really to work on together. And now the plan for applying, alhamdulillah, thank you, Dr. Zaid, for joining right now. So, and for others, next, the last topic is that the plan for applying the Maqasid methodology in research. So we've applied for to present our paper with Dr. Zaid. We applied to present our paper at the conference in I think it is in the Netherlands. And the conference is actually about the Islamic economics and how to achieve the Ihsani economy. So we just came up with this title, reforming the non-traditional work environment to achieve Ihsani economy. So here, non-traditional work environment means the gig economy, what is called the gig economy. So if you see if you see the delivery people, the food delivery people, or the Uber, the Lyft, the drivers, and freelancers, so they're all part of this non-traditional work environment or the gig economy. And so the purpose of this paper is going to be to propose an objectives-based analytical framework for improving societal well-being and the advancement to achieve an Ihsani economy, with special reference to non-traditional work environment. And so we thought about the design methodology, design approach, is that we will do the content analysis from multiple disciplines. And so we'll look at what is the gig economy, how to understand it. But before we do that, we'll have to utilize the Maqasid methodology, the new Maqasid methodology, to analyze this purpose, actually, how to work it, how to use the Quran and Sunnah to understand the relationships within the non-traditional work environment, and how to achieve this kind of an economy which is that is more kind of holistic or interconnected kind of environment, like the business environment, and that is conducive to protect the society from chaos or anarchy. And so the research plan for me is that since we've defined the purpose already and the problem, then the next step would be to really read and reflect on the Quran and Sunnah. So maybe for the next couple of months, we'll have to do the reflection just read the Quran and Sunnah and try to read them with the view about this topic. So from we have the back of our minds that topic, and the idea of amal, for example, and the ideas how it is related to many other concepts, how it is related to other objectives and values that we can find in the Quran and Sunnah, and the commands and universal laws and groups and proofs. And so we'll have to do that, inshallah. And this will be used to build the conceptual framework. So this is going to be very important, and then building the conceptual framework. And also at the same time, of course, we'll have to do the critical studies of the literature. And we find a lot of literature on gig economy today, and basically they propose different solutions. They pose a lot of they enumerate a lot of problems there, advantages, disadvantages for companies, for individuals, for societies, for the whole economies. And so we'll have to make sense of all of this and try to, using this framework, try to make sense of all of this, and at the end come up with certain understanding, maybe come up with principles or theories related to this, the gig economy, or the modern consumer economy, and how to understand it. And so I would end the sharing of slides here, and this is I think this is the end of the presentation. So really, thank you very much for listening, and of course now, Dr. Jasmine, if you could do your part, that would be really good. And we will have, I think, time for questions, I think, afterwards, if I'm not mistaken. Dr. Loni? Okay, thank you. Why?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I believe now you can hear me well. I will go back and assalamu alaikum. I'll continue now with the session that we have now by giving some notable points. As you see here on this first slide, I have given a title on my own to what I will be talking about as sustainable Maqasid integration of knowledge, methodological approach to re-envisioning and reinventing economic scholarship, based on what the Maqasid methodology is already basically all about. Reinventing and re-envisioning Islamic scholarship. In our case, it is Islamic economics, or economics from Islamic perspective, or economics basically, but a reinvented and re-envisioned economic scholarship. So I must thank, of course, Dr. Ildus for presenting this wonderful overview and comprehensive insight about how he, and even together with Dr. Zaid, how he tries to both of them try to publish a paper to promote development of economics and provide an alternative view to the world. So I'll be giving these notable points based on my reading of the article of Dr. Ildus and Dr. Professor Almira Ahmetova. It was published by them. Based on which the presentation has been made, but then extra things have been added, which are not really in the paper, but he mentioned that you can read the paper in order to understand certain sections that he presented in greater detail. Just to check to make sure that you can hear me, because I didn't hear a confirmation.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, wonderful. Because I didn't hear anything, and I thought I don't see any camera, any pictures, since I have minimized it. So I will move on by basically the first slide introducing what the paper has been talking about in general, because I don't want to, of course, read about the paper in detail or make repetitive remarks that Dr. Ildus already presented. But basically, the paper is attempting and explaining the methodology, the missing methodology, or basically the essential element of methodology in research. So we have there a subtitle, which is Methodology, the Essence, Importance, and this section is definitions that I've seen of Abdas, of Fitzmaglub, of even Auda's comments on methodology, and why we should have a discourse on this methodology. We have heard that sources of knowledge are very much important when talking about a methodology. Methodology cannot just be based on positivist reasoning of the Vienna School, based on what Dr. Ildus explained already, because it is basically also, in essence, normative. It is not really objective, as Milton Friedman has been saying, and this is not what I'm saying, but this is what many scholars, even Nobel Prize winners, have acknowledged. So the methodology in general, in particularly in economics, needs basically a more holistic view and perspective. When looking into the current practices of Islamic economics and finance, in the paper, it has been explained that this methodology, of course, is still not developed. And the essential thing of any science, of any discipline, is basically a good and sound methodology, because that is the way, the steps, how we can attain our objective. And if we don't have the developed and reliable steps, or maybe we didn't falsify them and didn't verify them, in which we cannot appraise theories, then we are basically not able to develop this. The development of Islamic economics, of course, started from even before Islamization of knowledge movement in the 20th century. And the scholars have attempted, of course, to provide an alternative. It is an answer to the conventional economic approach. But in the paper, there was a discourse on fiqh and economics, basically. And I will be talking later on in more detail and refer to the paper per se in that point to explain further what I could kind of say where integration should be made. And partially, the paper has already been saying that there should be an integration of basically an understanding of fiqh. But I have one small remark in regards to considering both either prescriptive or descriptive, basically, how would I say, disciplines as we would understand them today and historically as well. The proposition of the paper is in general to provide a new methodology based on integration. And it's not like the Maqasid methodology that is being done by the Maqasid Institute. It's on the book of Jasser Auda. And lastly, the paper is proposing a methodology of integration of knowledge or integrated knowledge in Islamic economics and finance based on this table that you are seeing, which is basically a snapshot that I have extracted from the paper, and which you have already seen in the slides, and it has been explained by Dr. Ildus already. So the notable points that I want to make in general to kind of add on to the discourse and enrich the discourse we have already heard, it is not just or overview of the paper, but it's an addition because the talk was not also about the paper per se, but it was about, as you have seen, trying to apply the Maqasid methodology in economics. So my notable points in relation to the paper and on my own view, with my own experience, research, and views, these points will basically help to direct maybe where and how we could observe the reality and apply the Maqasid methodology to develop economics, and in that way also other disciplines. The globalized Western promoted lifestyle is inculcating not only human but and foreign in the human, not only the foreign elements of reasoning and action, but also elements that are unsustainable. Integration of knowledge is the way, and it calls to revisit the meaning and purpose of human creation and basically establish some moderation or wasatiyya. So the Maqasid methodology really tries to do that, to establish some wasatiyya and sustainable development. And we can relate it to ESG, SDGs, renewables, green movements, and so on. And previously, there have been done many efforts, as the Maqasid methodology book also explains, but they were kind of partialistic, apologetic, contradictory, and so on. And as Hanif, in his survey of Islamization of knowledge, says, there has been a failure to understand what Islamization is. And this basically tries to integrate the revealed and the modern bodies of knowledge, or the legacy and the modern bodies of knowledge. And these are not only legacy and modern bodies of knowledge of Islam, but also of other disciplines. As we have seen, the polymaths of the historical times, from Aristotle, even Galileo, or Ibn Sina, Farabi, and Ghazali, all of them have mastered multiple disciplines. But now, many of those disciplines are way more developed, way more advanced through the scientific movements and developments. So we have to adopt basically a rational and transcendental approach or sources of knowledge and relate this to SDGs, or alternatively some purposive oriented development, and adopting it and transforming it through understanding, or basically fiqh. Now I want to ask, is fiqh just a source-related discipline and separate from economics, which is descriptive? I perceive that both are prescriptive and descriptive. This is the point I want to make in relation to the paper. But of course, I agree with what the paper is communicating, but the practice of economics and even understanding of fiqh and its application throughout the times has made them kind of obsolete, not really impactful, or as the Maqasid methodology book says, it has made them partialistic. So we need a more holistic approach. So that's it all about. This contributes to the revival of an alternative or Islamic scientific tradition compatible with modern times. But it needs to be prolific, and we need to be prolific in what we are talking about, like fiqh, for instance. It is vast, but most importantly, it always welcomed everyone's contributions. So it doesn't mean that if we have a point and we didn't master fiqh, that we cannot give some contribution. We can give our view, because fiqh means understanding. And if we are right, we'll get 2 rewards. And if we are wrong, we'll get just 1 reward. And that's a trial and error, as we have seen from the table as proposed in the paper by Dr. Ildus. So the full Western and other paradigms of knowledge have been proven questionable, and we can see how others are proposing some alternatives, and even question, why wouldn't we propose some alternative? Islamic economics is a response to already contemporary understanding and reasoning in economics, but it is not against the body of knowledge of Western economics or conventional economic body of knowledge. But we need to adopt, when we are using basically and trying to do work in economics, Islamic economics, we need to adopt the fallacies of Auda's, from Auda's book, Sheikh Auda's book, which is contradiction, imitation, apologetics, partialism, and deconstructionism. We need to be aware of these things because we may have some views, but those views may basically be just apologetic. We may say, we have, based on cycles of reasoning, based on what we read in the Quran, what Islam is teaching, we understand that, but we need to kind of see and apply this because we need to adapt and just make it easy, facilitate ease, don't make it hard. All right, that's all fine, but we need to give effort. We need to question whether we are giving effort. Did we attempt? Did we ask the question, what is at loss? And are we going to lose if we are apologetic? So we need to look at the long-term perspective, have a long-term vision. And these are marked in the paper as well, indirectly, if not directly. In the paper, I can sense them in the paper, but they are also inevitable. It's inevitable that we would have maybe sometimes imitation, but imitation doesn't mean, if we refer to some work, it doesn't mean we are imitating. So we need to dispel this need, to refer to other sources of knowledge and benefit from them, from what imitation implies. So Islamic economics is not just an imitation. In a way, it had no other way. It had to imitate, and there was no wrong thing in imitating certain aspects of Western economics. But then, have they really been persistent and principled to apply what, let's say, the sources of knowledge in Islam are teaching? So we need to reverse in this way the course and reset the trajectories of knowledge, globalization, and universalism, if I can express myself in that way. And then another point that I can say, Islamic economics has not been used as much as Islamic banking and finance. And Islamic banking finance is the industry that basically needs reform, and it needs to refer to Islamic economic foundations and the essential teachings. And this Islamic economic concept has become just a sub-part of Islamic finance in some books. And usually there's just a partial reference, this partial, you see, the tajzi, the partial reference to Islamic economics just as a general picture, and then we talk all about different contracts, different bank services, and financialization of the industry, which basically is the one being criticized. So we shall reform it through adaptation of the Maqasid methodology and reverse this kind of understanding. So fiqh is very much important. Islamic economics, banking, finance remains an alternative, and we just need to work on improving it and orient it towards maybe sustainable development goals. I'll go a bit quicker because I want to give more time for questions and maybe discussion on all of this. But it's really a kind of reflection here rather than maybe some extensive contributions in theoretical sense. I'm kind of more raising questions. So even I'm very glad that there is commonality in what Dr. Ildus presented and what I basically have already been putting in my presentation, and we did not communicate. So we have basically some common understanding and agreement on, do we really need, we should make things universally appealing, like Islamic economics, and then will non-Muslims be willing to accept such narrative, maybe use of Islamic? We can just say economics and explain what we mean. Do we need then this Islamic? Because they are esteemed. I watched a video from an Ethis platform by Professor Dawood Wikari, and he has been talking with some esteemed Fed official, the Federal Reserve in the US, and they talked about Islamic banking, finance, and they have said, I always thought, that's maybe for Muslims only, because when I saw the Islamic, I did not feel really attracted. So there's a need to kind of explain more what we mean, as suggested by Wikari, rather than just point on the concepts of Islamic or maybe some Arabic terms that will be creating some aversion by esteemed experts and institutions. It may even deprive us to obtain grants for our research. So we need to explain what we mean by Islamic economics or economics from our Maqasid methodology perspective. And then, can we make really the cycles of reflection and link our work with the Quran? This is something that I raise. And can we form the composite framework? Composite framework, as explained in the book of Maqasid methodology, is basically the reflection upon the concepts, the objectives, the proofs, the universal laws, all right, I may not mention all of them. I think there are 6 or 7, but I'll mention them later. And can we even rationally communicate our work? Sometimes, if we cannot link, I perceive that many Muslims may not be able to link because, sadly, I believe, many don't read that much Quran, and there's such encouragement to read the Quran on a daily basis, but many don't do. I may include myself into, when I say many, I include myself there. I need to work on that as well. Everybody needs to work on himself. And that's the toughest part. And but if we don't do that, can we even communicate our thoughts properly? That's something else as well. We need to be able to do that in order to develop a proper economic approach, an approach that's appealing. Because once we start mumbling and are not able to express what we mean, others would not be happy to listen to us, whereas they may listen to some other wrong thoughts and they may be very affected to that because such person has a beautiful, expressive approach and language. So we need to work on these things, and only then, when we make it kind of sound neutral and explain what we mean and how it benefits others, people will accept it. So these are the points, and then kind of the result of the discussion that I am having here is we need to look into these foundations: ontology, epistemology, axiology. This is like a general expression. We need to distinguish the thawabit from the mutaghayirat, and then through the cycles of reflection, we need to know which is which and distinguish them, and then discuss more on the, of course, changeable rulings, and then see what are the fatwa, that scholars have been given when we can make some exceptions in application of thawabit in certain daruriyat, certain exceptional circumstances, but we need to make sure to come back to the original and ruling once the circumstances have changed. And then we need to use the Maqasid methodology with the principles-based approach as it has within itself, and appraise theories. We need to apply it and focus on appraising theories and validate them based on what Dr. Ildus has been saying and even explaining in his paper, but more in the presentation. He was talking about it more in the presentation based on the verification, falsification, and other concepts we used and derived from different methodological sources, books of methodology and economics. And this extends, this approach, of adopting the Maqasid methodology. Partially, I have contributed to papers and explained how to develop an integration of knowledge methodological approach to develop Islamic economics, banking, finance. And there I have principles, suggested principles, and even in the book, in the paper of Dr. Ravikov and Ahmedova, there are certain proposed principles. And this extends also, and what Atas and Malkawi have promoted in their books as metaphysics of Islam, epistemological integration, in a practical sense. And we know, and I agree, and it's really interesting, that many books and papers have been written explaining what we should do, but few have really said in detail how we should do something. So that's a missing methodology. So applying the fallacies of reasoning from partialism, apologetics, and so on, as stated in the book of Maqasid methodology, we can basically try to filter our reasoning. We have to take time to reflect on the Quran and Sunnah. Sometimes it's really hard because we want quick solutions. But at the same time, besides reflection on the Quran and Sunnah, we need to know the literature in our area. We need to be experts there. And then we need to develop particular steps if we want to appeal to others. We need to develop steps of how we plan to add value to others. And not just to say Quran and Sunnah are universal sources of knowledge as we Muslims believe. There are people who don't believe that. So to try to operate without money, do this without money. Many times in economics and even in life, we human beings will think, oh, we can get money. If something doesn't bring us money, we don't want to do it. We have to do things sometimes without and for basically on voluntary basis in order for us to later on in the longer term create value, and that will bring basically money. Or if you live collectively and you have general welfare in your circle, then you basically benefit from sharing and caring about each other. And then I say, why not to refer to books of conventional economics when we speak about Islamic economics? There has been some aversion among students when they hear about Islamic economics not to read any book on conventional economics sometimes, and saying, oh, we have to adopt this scholar's view who rejects everything. But we don't need to do that, and we should not do that. That's just one scholar or two scholars or 5% of scholars. But there are 95% who basically did a lot of things great and benefited many people, and we can just take that course and apply the Maqasid methodology and contribute further in a genuine sense. So there's no wrong, but we need to remain principled and always remember the fallacies that the human mind may have, to be apologetic, to be partial, to be contradictory, maybe without being aware. And if we are, we need to accept the critique. So the polymaths of Islamic civilization have already done that in greater detail, and they allowed themselves to make mistakes. So they were not just theologians and religious scholars discussing some fatwa and religious questions on Islamic channels we see on TV. They are active contributors and human beings in a society, but they were also at the same time very logical. If you read the book of the Hafat al-Falasifa of al-Ghazali, translated in your own language, you will definitely find difficulties understanding his points of refutation. So they were really sophisticated scholars, but it has nothing to do, with theology or religion. But they were very much grounded on theology and religion, and that's why he wrote later on the Ulumuddin. And then comprehend the relevance of this legacy. You need to comprehend, first have the fit of this legacy, and operationalize it with Maqasid methodology. But we need to understand what Maqasid methodology is first all about. So I'm kind of giving a step-by-step approach, not of course to it's not just related to the discourse of this small talk that we are having, but it's basically for all listeners, for the audience, for anyone who will listen later on, to kind of know how they may contribute to developing an economics that is more welfare-oriented and Maqasid-oriented. And then we need to memorize the steps of the Maqasid methodology and generate examples. We need to apply it to solve problems and not just to talk about how to memorize the book. And then we need to expect no instant solution. It needs to be gradual, and we need to work on it continually. Extant contributions to Islamic economic banking finance methodology, of course, can help a lot. So we need to read them. And one of the steps in the Maqasid methodology is to read the available body of knowledge. And it may be not everything. It's really hard to read everything, but read the most important ones. And then ask those who basically have already had experience in the field for 20, 30 years. This is basically a shortcut for you to contribute something, because we know Allah takes away, how does a hadith go? The scholars, once scholars move, then the blessings move. So people have no reference to scholars, the ulama, once they go. And these ulama may not be only ulama in fiqh and qira'at or hufad or any other Islamic disciplines per se, but it may be economists, it may be engineers, it may be medical doctors and so on. So the example here that I'm kind of giving as which is kind of practical in my view, the book of Hafaz and the article of Hafaz and Hanif, when they propose this kind of two principles for a methodology in Islamic economics to appraise theories, we can adopt the Maqasid methodology here and use these principles within our approach in Islamic economics or economics, and try to understand what are the maqasid we want to attain. So I put here some kind of steps. We adopt the plus A and B. I'm not referring to it, reading. You can read it while I'm talking and see what I'm talking about. And we can try to have step number one, we can prepare our research draft and show the workings of the doctrine with logic, reason, and provide facts, of course. And this equals basically to policies. Policy making should be rational, so it should make sense. And then we can show how that can profit the institutions, the government, the university, the institute, to whichever we refer to and approach. And then we can make the calculations or maybe show the steps that make sense by adopting the Maqasid methodology and take into consideration what the institution has done already, so meaning be the master of what they have done, and then try to address the extant issues that they would wish to do and to resolve in society. Number two, approach the institutions through institutions in which you are working and or maybe where you're volunteering, and propose this idea to link the doctrines derived from Quran, what the Maqasid methodology proposes, through cycles of reflection. And in cases that you don't know, it's hard, you can always ask others to know and accept the help from them. Don't feel shy. Then detail how the policy decision-making can be reformed to attain, what in the Maqasid methodology is explained as, for instance, the reference in the Quran on the values of justice, adala, of fairness, of equity, but not equality. We can have some distinguishment between certain people, some are rich, some are poor, and then prosperity and so on. And number four, to take into consideration if we approach institutions which are not Islamic or in countries where Muslims are working, but the state is secular. We have believers, and believers, they need texts, and they will accept texts from the Quran, from Sunnah, commands, proofs, concepts, objectives, and so on, which are basically elements of the composite framework. But then others, non-Muslims, they need logical explanation of what you are proposing in order to basically accept it because they want to benefit from it. But they, of course, don't need to be Muslims if they wish to benefit from that. That's very important. So we explain what we mean. So we need to disseminate what the Maqasid methodology is all about in order to jumpstart this kind of recommendation or suggestion. And then how we have to question, how can we add to the body of knowledge in economics? Where does it navigate the industry? How can it relate to SDGs? And can we appeal that, for instance, SDG projects are used using Maqasid methodology or Maqasid to help Muslim societies per se, if not elsewhere? And how could we communicate this to policymakers who don't know anything about the Quran or are poorly versed if we ourselves do not comprehend it properly, or develop some workable system or some example to show them how it works? So thinking and contemplating about this is important. It may sound very simplistic when I communicate it. So how to support the scholarly and industrial effort to innovate and provide services along this methodological approach, guided by principles. And yeah, here I'm kind of repeating a little bit in this question. How to attain greater academic industry if we only explain what in the paper is explained as more happiness and better, we should be better off, have greater welfare. Yeah, these are the examples, but don't we need to show examples of how it works first? Give some particular examples. And this is where we go beyond what, of course, the paper is doing, what Dr. Ildus has done. And he acknowledged that he wants to move forward and do extra things, additional things, because this is a paper he has done years ago. And then the Maqasid methodology wants to show how it works, basically to provide examples through reflection, some cycles of reflection of Quran, and brainstorm basically the ideas in action, not just give ideas. Even if it is not fully related in the beginning, it can be related later on, over time. And Yeah. All right. In other words, Maqasid methodology strives to shape our reasoning, to link our conceptualized work with relatable or closest set of concepts, objectives, values, commands, laws, groups, or proofs in revelation. So we may have some work that we are doing like gig economy. Gig economy is not mentioned in the Quran, but we can reflect and try to identify concepts, values, commands, universal laws, groups, as the book explains, and try to link that gig economy to all these elements, and then form this composite framework. And then our cycles of reflection of that composite framework will basically help us explain how we can impact the reality in economics or even other fields, in politics, in IT, in artificial intelligence, in the environment, and so on. So this is all from me. So I hope I didn't take much time, and there is sufficient time for that discussion. So thank you very much. I will stop sharing. All right, it already stopped. So.
Okay, thank you very much to Dr. Ildus for the explanation, and also thank you very much for Dr. Jasmine for the comments. And now, any question or comment, please raise your hand. Okay, Ustaz Nur Fajri, please.
Thank you very much for the talk, Dr. Yasmin. My question is, you mentioned that it's important to take and achieve many Quranic principles related to economics. Can you recommend to us one or two books regarding this topic? I mean, economic principles, but from Quran in English. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, the book that I can say that basically the whole talk and firstly presentation of Dr. Ildus, then my discussant points and notable points. It's Maqasid methodology book of Sheikh Jasir Auda. But I believe I will leave the word to Dr. Ildus because he can know much better what he wishes to propose based on his presentation and the work that he's attempting to do.
Well, there are, in area of Islamic economics, finance, there is thousands and upon thousands of articles already. There are so many. It's just it's like a sea. If you want to swim in that sea, it's possible. You can print out all of those papers and fill a swimming pool, I think. But indeed, there is so much. If you're using, if you are at a university that has access to international journals, scientific journals, then I would really advise to use your library, to use your universities, the access to these journals, international journals. But in terms of the authors, of course, there are so many. I mean, you can look up Mehmet Asutai. You can look at Prof. Muhammad Hashim Kamali. He has a lot of writings, and even right now, as I speak, I hold 2 books of him by him. These are like more on political science, but also they are all related to economics. One is the right to life, security, privacy, and ownership in Islam. And another one, the right to education, work, and welfare in Islam. So you can log on to their website, iais.org.my. That's in Malaysia, iais.org.my. and I think you can find a lot of literature there. I mean, and there are so many others. It depends on really what kind of information you're looking for, whether it is like philosophical work, methodological work, then maybe Fathi Hassan Balkawi, again Walid Addas, and then again Hashim Kamali, and Taha Jabir Al-Alwani, and of course you should and definitely Reinventing Islamic Scholarship, Maqasid Methodology by Jasir Wada. Of course, that's the book. But there is a lot, and I think the main principle would be for us to try and look at the sources, the source itself, at the Quran and Sunnah first, but using a methodology, because really, as I stated in my presentation, it all depends on how you look at things. Depends on your perspective. You may have a narrow perspective at something, like studying. I don't know what. Is there anything in particular you're interested in economics, Nur Fajri, Ramadan? Any area, specific area?
Actually, I give many talks about riba and gharar. My university's thesis in my bachelor's was about gharar and its impact to mudarabah. Al-gharar wa atharuhu fil mudarabah. But in Arabic, not English.
Yeah, it's okay, but it's good that you can look at it from a fiqh perspective, from a traditional fiqh perspective, and you explain what is gharar, what is uncertainty, and what are the levels of uncertainty available, and you can analyze different financial instruments that exist, and you look at them from this perspective, from gharar, how much uncertainty is there. But will it be enough? I think no, because you'd also need to try to have a deeper understanding what makes let's say an agreement uncertain, and why people go into this this kind of approaches or methods to they use what is like bay'ina, tawarruq, and other contracts. Why do they use it, and at a more psychological level? And then what would be the implications on at social level and at political level as well? Maybe specifically to Indonesia or to Malaysia. So there are so many perspectives that you can look at. But if you manage to build a framework for about certainty, uncertainty from the holistic Quranic perspective, I think that would really help a lot. And from there you can already look at and link it to other disciplines, link it to phenomena, the existing phenomena. I mean, inflation is one thing, then the speculation is another phenomena, and then the other phenomena could be I don't know, some any other that is in economics or in our daily life. So it's just about the connectivity of everything.
Yeah, if I may add something, is it okay, Dr. Ildus?
Yes.
Just to add, since I wanted to, of course, let Dr. Ildus explain and answer you, give you the list of books that he perceives are very important, since he has given this main discussion. I was just a discussant. But if I understand Brother Fajri, you needed books that will help you understand more how to develop principles, right, with a methodology from Islamic perspective, right?
Yeah, directly from the Quran.
From the Quran and related from the Quran. So definitely,
it's like actually like Tafsir Ayatul Ahkam or something like that, but related only to economic principles. Because in Arabic Turoth, I didn't find it. Perhaps in some new books in English, we can find it.
As you know, what Dr. Ildus presented, what I discussed after, we have discussed and said there that fiqh, Islamically, Islamic civilization before has always had the approach from fiqh, to develop and interpret other disciplines. They always had this foundation of methodology of fiqh, usul al-fiqh. And as you know, one of the parts and branches of fiqh is basically mu'amalat. And there are the other parts, but mu'amalat is basically under mu'amalat comes Islamic economics, banking, finance, sociology, psychology, and all other disciplines. And the foundations are basically, we can say, fiqh or the Islamic worldview, the Quranic worldview, on which you can find so many books. If you go to even the website of IIIT, the International Institute of Islamic Thought, they have many books in multiple languages, in English, in Arabic, even in Malay, Indonesian. And you can find their books that particularly talk about Islamic epistemology, ontology, and methodology even. You can find there the free book PDF version of Fath al-Malkawi, Epistemological Integration, even of Sheikh Jasir Auda. I think there is a book on the first version of Maqasid Sharia. But then there is no book of Maqasid methodology, the new one, Reinventing Islamic Scholarship. I would recommend you to really look into this book in detail, Reinventing Islamic Scholarship, and try to understand the communication of the methodology from it, from the fallacies that we sometimes may have in our reasoning, until, basically the last step where we develop a composite framework. When we read the Quran gives objectives, it gives orders, commands, it gives universal laws of why we are created, what's the purpose of human beings, which illa liya'budun. And based on this methodology, when you understand how this methodology is trying to reinvent and revive the Islamic scholarship, you will be able also to refer to the Quran and link it to whichever field you are attempting to do research in. In your case, it is, of course, Islamic economics, Islamic banking, finance. Then additional book that you may read is from this Ildus on methodology, the one that Dr. Ildus has been showing. You can find it actually in PDF if you just, or you can, if you're on ResearchGate, just type in Ildus and Islamic economics and it will come out. Then some books on from Professor Aslam Hanif, Dr. Hafaz Qurtani, Professor Mehmet Asutai. I have written it in the comments so you can refer and see how they differently approach and explain, let's say, Islamic economic development and related to reflection on Quran and Sunnah. But you may also need to kind of understand maybe the concept of methodological operationalization, which is very, very strong and very important. Methodological operationalization means basically to explain the reasons behind a methodology. Or let's say if you take principles, okay, usually what we operationalize in any methodology is principles. For instance, if we have a principle of verifiability, or we have a principle of permissibility or acceptability, like let's say ibaha, or we have, let's say, maqbuliyya, which is the acceptability. Operationalization means that we identify the reasons why this principle is so important and strong, and how does it defend your proposed theory. So you are reasons behind this principle and how this principle later on is checking whether your theory enables you to check whether your theory is correct or wrong, and whether you are able to attain your objective. Like Ibaha, you know what's Ibaha? I believe you speak Arabic already, you revealed that to us. If we say Ibaha, we can find many articles, many books that have talked about this Ibaha principles. Al-aslu fil ashya Ibaha. So we know that. So you can list this maxim as one of the reasons. This is just a common and basic example of a principle, but you may identify a principle like Dr. Ildus in his paper. He will share also, of course, the paper. You can communicate with us even later and with him, email him. In his paper, he has certain principles. Like one of the principles is what is it? Option. That was
Optionality.
Huh? Please, Dr. Ildus, can you explain that, Hans? And he explained the reason why he considers that principle or few principles to be strong to appraise a methodology. So he can explain just to you as well on this. If he doesn't, of course, he would clarify better than me because he's the author of the paper.
Well, I just used the some ideas from a non-Muslim, from Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who wrote a few very important books on uncertainty. Like if you read his Black Swan book, and then the Fooled by Randomness, and then also Skin in the Game is the latest book, and also the another book of him was what is that? Not fragile, not fragility. Subhanallah. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Muhammad. Okay, so these are just some of the ideas that I gleaned from other sources. That for something, for ideas or for objects to be really robust, there needs to be some things like optionality, for example. We can choose different options. If you are an innovator, if you are an engineer, you are building something, you fail, you build again, you try something else, and so you just don't stop at one, but you try different ways to achieve your goals. And so here comes the importance of optionality. You have different options. So one of the things why people go for freelancing, for this working in gig economy, is because of the different options, flexibility, optionality, and so that's why they go for like ride sharing. They deliver on their motorbikes, they deliver food, and so on. So that's the kind of optionality is one of them, and there are some other principles. But let others also ask if there is anything to ask.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
Assalamualaikum. I'm Hafiza. First of all, I would like to compliment to both Dr. Ildus and Dr. Jasmine. Dr. Ildus, you have presented a very, I would say there's something new for me, because I'm still in the process of learning, especially for the Maqasid methodology, because my PhD also I touch one of the concept. I mean, in my study also I touch on Maqasid as a one of my umbrella concept, which is looking at. I also acknowledge the just mentioned about integration of knowledge, that I also include the theory that I integrated, but we cannot deny at the same time as for me, as a novice, a new what we call in this area or research, I still what we call need to get what the ideas or the theory from the Western that both of you discuss. But I get some what we call the spirit from your presentation, Dr. Ildus. There's a very interesting that I can see the Ihsani economy is something that really has objective that relates to the Maqasid, which is Sa'adah and Falah. And then also the highlights by the also open my mind, especially for tonight, that I need to learn, especially to read more related to the Maqasid methodology. So perhaps Dr. Ildus can explain a bit about the Ihsani economy, because I want to know, to understand more on Ihsani economy. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to understand it myself also. That is the answer, and that's the reason I want to we want to write that paper. Well, the honest answer is that this is the theme of the conference, and I want to develop a concept using this Maqasid methodology. And the idea that came to mind while thinking of different topics to present, to write about, is really looking at this new phenomenon, which is the gig economy. But how to envision an economy? I mean, an Ihsani economy is something that is, I think, it should be close to the ideal economy, which is where the justice prevails, where there is equity, there are people. I mean, there is enough for the people's not wants, but for the people's needs, and so I mean, this is the kind of I think philosophical outlook into what a good economy or hayat al-tayyiba actually. We can also use that kind of terminology, but something where people live in a kind of in a just society, where people have enough, where where you're not really afraid of tomorrow. All right. So you see, the opposite of Ihsani economy today is what is going on in Ukraine. This is what my country is doing to the country of my brothers and my friends, my colleagues. You see, there are many things like that. So yes. Dr. Zaid.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. And I really enjoyed this presentation and all the discussion, MashaAllah. Yes, like my dear colleague and MashaAllah and brother and best, the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on me, brother Ildus has mentioned that we're trying to discover, I mean, basically it is up to us to define what this Ihsani economy. So beside these elements of justice and this and that, but like, I would want to maybe jump off from the last point that Ildus mentioned, which is, do you see what happened in Ukraine? But why are we interested in Ukraine? Part of it is that somebody is communicating to us and connecting with us at some very basic human level, that this is human suffering. And there is still part of our fitrah that when we see suffering, we react to it and we sympathize and we have compassion for the people. There are some basic elements of justice that we have, that if I am sitting in my home, I should not be violated. Children should not be hurt. And, there's just some clear justice and injustice issues here. That one thing that we're all motivated to have this global stance against injustice is connectivity. And if we try, so this connectivity is coming from the work of Dr. Basma Abdul Ghaffar and her approach to Maqasid methodology. So we're using the connectivity to understand how the 7 elements of the methodology work with each other and how we relate to each other. And when we connect with each other, then we feel compassion, and then with that we feel the sense of justice of what's appropriate or not, and then that creates different dynamic, different behavioral patterns in the society and in the community that can change the process, that can change the structure. So here, connectivity, if we apply that to that concept of gharar, and here is very important, Akhi, to the brother who asked about gharar. What is exactly you're trying to achieve? What is the goal? If the goal at the end of the day, there is gharar. Gharar is either confusion, information not being that clear. Then the answer to that is that we need to improve connectivity. Through connectivity, we feel like how we can communicate information in a meaningful and easy way. So that brings about ihsan. So this will be ihsan in action, that, because like at some level, ihsan is what? Ihsan is like ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarah. This one definition, that, we worship Allah as we can see Him. And if we do not see Him, then Allah sees us. This, again, it's a connectivity. It's a connectivity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or feeling that we're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here, if we have that sense and this concept, and we start analyzing and using the connectivity, then we start thinking, what are the fi'at involved in a different action? So in a gharar, in a mudaraba contract, we have the different parties that are involved. So these are the fi'at, as in using the 7-element methodology. And we what do we value? What are the value system? How we judge success or lack thereof? What about one-time contract versus long-term relationships? How do you look at these, short-term connectivity versus long-term connectivity? And based on all of this, success in this dunya and in the hereafter, success now, success in a year or 10 years from now. So once you start have this long-term view of things and how we are all connected and how we are all interdependent, and our success in one area would determine our success in other areas, then inshallah we start realizing this ihsani karami bi'awnihi ta'ala. And may Allah help, inshallah. So, Jazakumullah khair. I really just wanted to make that quick comment. And I'm really glad that about all the conversation taking place here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tazai, for explanation.
Yeah.
Just a bit on the integration of English that Dr. Jasmine highlighted just now. When we're looking at this current situation of Russia and Ukraine, what can especially because I'm interested to contribute something to the issue as well. So what could be the issues that the current situation we can see on the scarcities that we can explore based on the scarcities, the problem of economics of scarcities, and then we can explore using the Maqasid methodology, perhaps Dr. Zaid or Dr. Jasmine and Dr. Ildus can comment on that.
You mixed, the questions with many elements, and with Maqasid, with integration of knowledge in Ukraine, and what I understand is you are asking how would you how can you contribute to a solution in the case of Ukraine and Russia through Maqasid methodology? Is it that question, or is the question more like how can we analyze the situation and this conflict, the war of Ukraine, Russia, in light of Maqasid methodology, integration of knowledge? Which one is it?
The second one, Dr. Jasmine.
The first one.
The second one.
The second one. All right. How can we analyze and understand? Because honestly, the way, if I would reflect on the first one, it's really hard. You know, I can make prayers and support as much as I can. I'm an ordinary citizen, but I believe I can encourage others who are in power to maybe take some action and help. But how we can understand and analyze this, as now Dr. Zaid was explaining and elaborated perfectly, what's the Ihsani economy and what Dr. Ildus explained. Even I can add, you know, to understand this conflict that's ongoing through the Maqasid and through the integration of knowledge. But integration of knowledge is basically integral to the Maqasid methodology because, as Dr. Zaid emphasized, we need to try to see and analyze the different connectivities between the elements of the composite framework. The elements are basically related to the cycles of reflection in the Quran, trying to identify the elements of objectives, the concepts, the proofs, universal laws, and others. I cannot remember all now of these elements, and try to see and analyze by identification of certain ayats talking about values, for instance. Another element is values. There are ayats that talk about values, about justice, about honesty, about effectiveness, efficiency, development, and so on. All of these are revealing to us then being frank as well. All of these are, let's say, reflections we can make on the Quran, Sunnah, and see whether the events that are happening in reality between Russia and Ukraine now in Ukraine are aligned. If they are not aligned, that means that there is definitely no integration of knowledge. There is destruction by all sense. And at the same time, it is contrary to what an Ihsani economy is all about. If I refer to the hadith of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says, if we see some evil, we should try to remove it with our hands. And if not with our hands, then with actions. And then if not with actions, then we can basically try to have feelings or hate it in our heart. So the Ihsani economy is about perfecting an economy, or Ihsani society is basically a society that's perfected. We can maybe refer to the best one as the Medina society, but what's going on in Russia and Ukraine is definitely the opposite, as Dr. Ildus said, of what an Ihsani economy is. But I can say what basically we can do is we can talk about it, we can raise awareness about it in our educational circles, in our circles of friends, and try to explain to them by words. If we cannot take actions, we can't take actions directly there, but we can take indirectly actions and try to prevent any kind of things like that anywhere else, even if it means in our small circle of friends. So this is maybe a way how we can try to think about it. But if we want to think about it more constructively and systematically, we need more time and more cycles of reflection. Yeah. So I hope I managed to give you some kind of approach to reasoning about it.
Thank you, Dr. Jasmine.
Most welcome. Most welcome.
Thank you.
Were you also asking about scarcity? sister? The concept of scarcity?
Yeah, because we can see the situation happen right now. It might reflect to the demand of flour, for example, or we can see it perhaps in the near time we can see the rise of the price in terms of flour, food, other food as well. So it also reflect to the situation of the people who are really needs to to fulfill their basic needs, but due to this current situation, it will also reflect to what happened to the poor and needy people. So that's why I would think that the situation, it might the gap of scarcity become bigger due to this current situation. So
that's a good question. Let's see. Ildus, maybe if you want to try, and then I can also jump in and provide some thoughts.
If you try to apply it for war situations, I definitely as an ordinary person, depending on where you stand, where you live, of course, all of us it affects in different ways, or it doesn't affect at all to some of us. And depending on where you are, if you're able to help in some way, then of course you do. For example, just a few days ago, now you see Ukraine is affected. Definitely, there is a war going on. But the intellectuals in Russia who are intellectuals, the media people, those who understand, those who are really they're not affected by propaganda, they have to leave. They leave in droves. And so you just you try to help as much as you can if possible. But living in Malaysia or Indonesia, what you could do is to try to educate yourself as to the historical environment, or the history of that area. It is very, very important. The history of the area, of that geography, because it's all. It used to be one nation, like 1,000 something years ago. It all started from the Kiev. It was the first city basically built by Slavs, who are like Russians, kind of. They were not known by that name, Russian. But there were Slavic tribes living in that area, and the first city that was built in that area was Kiev, and so on. I mean, you just try to see what is the historical perspective of that, and going back to 2008, and even what is the behavior of Russian Federation today, and let's say in the past, since Putin came to power, actually since '99, and you'll be amazed about a lot of lies and propaganda that Russia tried to, but try to be empathetic to those who are suffering, because you don't have to read the Quran and understand that people need help. If the people need help, and you can help them.
Yeah. So maybe I want to address that issue of scarcity. See, number one, scarcity is a concept that is short term. In the short term, right now, at this moment, yes, we have a limited number of anything. You have a certain amount of money, you have a certain amount. So that is it seems that when it is presented as like this, it seems like it's logical. And then, however, then all this, how the rest of the economic theory is focuses on the scarcity and makes the world as a kind of game of win-lose, and with no synergies. Like, here synergies that can, if we rearrange, I mean, even if today this is the same money, sometime you go and if that same money you discuss with a person, with a vendor, and it's like, I want to have a long-term relationship, vendor relationship business with you. Suddenly, can we work out a discount or different pricing? Suddenly, you can make your money go double the amount, or it can do double that what you thought it can do. Now, where was this? Suddenly, what you thought that the limit to your resources exists a moment before now it becomes double. So here, the point that I want to emphasize is that scarcity happens, but within the cause and effect, logic of this moment. Now, the beautiful thing that in what we are trying to advocate in the Maqasid Institute and the Maqasid Economic Group is to say that this cause and effect that governs scarcity is part of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses and says that وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. How do we know what cause, what effect? This is based on our understanding and historical experience up to this moment. We come up with this cause and effect. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, but just remember always that you have only given a small fraction of knowledge. But sometime, and the beauty of this of Iman, say the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to shine against the dark spots that limit our knowledge and our ability. And when we look into, when have a goal, so don't think too much, focus on the causality, and this focus first of all about what you're trying to achieve, because there are many ways, there are better way to achieve it, to achieve that goal than what you're just focused on at the moment. Think of it like if you use the GPS, you use Google Map, or you use some kind of these apps. You are on a road, and the road, there's a big traffic. Of course, if you're in Jakarta and other countries, mashallah, there's a always traffic. But then suddenly these other apps can suggest different route to that place. So you can either just keep saying, no, I have to go this road because this is the imitation, this is the taqlid, this is how I've always done it, this is the cause and effect, this is the shortest distance between 2 points. So you have a logical argument there, but there are other, but this logical argument is not the best solution for the objective that you need, which is like getting from point A to point B. So here we apply, if you take the same concept and apply it into our economic thinking, and you say, no, we are worried about supplies coming from, for example, food supplies, and the scarcity that's happening because of food supplies coming from Russia and Ukraine. And then we forget that, on the other hand, that 1/3 of all food production gets wasted globally. And usually Western countries are more culprit in this waste. But it will be interesting that if even within Indonesia itself, how much food is wasted. And if we figure out that there's 10%, not 30% or 33%, if only 10% of the food is getting wasted in Indonesia, well, and if we save half of that, if we just save 5% of this wasted food, well, how much hunger is in Indonesia? Is it 5% of the population going hungry? Is it 10 or this? So this is the beautiful thing about in economics. We want to get the numbers because this is part of the cause and effect of this. Get the numbers, get the data, put it together, and see that we do not need to necessarily. And then we can find out. That we have solutions in our hands right now if we just practice better management of our food, of how we're preparing this food, how we're preserving it, how we are sharing it with those who are needy, and then we figure out that this assumed scarcity is not a big deal, or is not even relevant. I mean, at some level, if you step outside of your house or like right now in your room, is there a scarcity of oxygen? But there's no scarcity of oxygen. And I mean, there is a limited amount of oxygen in the atmosphere of Earth. That is true. But is it in any matter, in any way that is limiting you from breathing and functioning properly? No, it does not. So that same thing that sometimes we think this is a problem, and when it is not really a problem. And because we think it's a problem, it affects how we behave. So the way we behave is that, well, I have to provide for my tomorrow. I have to provide for my kids. I have to provide. I have insurance for health, insurance for all kind of eventualities, and I want to save for their education. And this is all because it is somehow driven from that mentality of individualism and scarcity. So everybody is fending for themselves, while we're trying to say, what if when we think in collective ways, how about we have all care for everybody's kids? We want to all care, have that system of takaful among Muslims, so I do not need to worry about having so much money to cover myself for the next 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 years. All I need to is take care of my fellow neighbor and people in my country and people around, neighbors of my country. And when we do that, then we are taking care of each other. So suddenly there's so much resources that we lock in for our own purposes no longer need to be locked in. And suddenly that, الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء. Shaitan always worrying, making us worry about poverty and encouraging us to do some stuff that are haram. So what is this haram thing? Sometimes we don't even perceive it easily as haram, but when we waste food, that is haram. When we hold our wealth, and while we know there are people suffering elsewhere, that is really not in line with the higher objectives of Islam. So again, there is scarcity, but it may not really matter. It should not be the center of our thinking and planning and strategic planning, because we can overcome them. But this overcoming them, it requires get the data and find innovative, out-of-the-box solutions for these problems. And these are solutions that really make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pleased with us, because it's really in the spirit of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do. I hope this is kind of not too long-winded comment, but it's just kind of a guidepost to how we should think about this concept of scarcity and the nature of our real problems and how they can really be solved through non-traditional approaches that actually is in harmony and is inspired by what our faith really calls us to do. Allahu Alam.
Yeah. Am I allowed to add maybe one point, Dr. Zaid?
Oh, absolutely. It is actually, I'm not in charge of this meeting. I will
add one point in relation to the scarcity concept and then the question as well. I didn't address anyhow scarcity, but I have just something nice in addition to what Dr. Zaid said, related to when he says wasting, scarcity. We don't have an Islamic economic scarcity. We have abundance of resources, meaning enough for everyone. If, as Dr. Zaid said, we manage well what we have. Sometimes we want something, but we don't even use what we have. So if we stop wasting even 5% of the 20% that's wasted, we can feed everyone who is starving. But then another thing, scarcity in relation to the conflict, Russia and war, this is the point I'm making. We see that prices of flour and oil and other things are getting more expensive. Everywhere around the world, in Bosnia as well, or maybe it's getting more scarce. But what we can do is when this kind of conflict happens, it affects many other nations, even African nations. So considering and pondering about the Maqasid methodology, which is purpose-oriented, We are looking for a purpose, for a long-term vision. What should we do to deprive, to come to a situation to feel that we are scarce of certain resources, or to see our neighboring countries or continents suffering from hunger because they were not maybe ready or don't have enough? We in our country can try to Arab our lands that are not Arab, and we can produce some foods, maybe rice if it's in Asia, or maybe here more like wheat in Bosnia. We have much lands that are not used at all for many years. And then we can try to produce more wheat, and if we have enough for Bosnians here, we can try to export it and donate it to countries that maybe need because they run out of supply due to certain conflicts like now Russia and Ukraine. So if Indonesia or Malaysia or any other country, Turkey, can produce more, be more efficient in production, then they can try to help countries and have alternative sources of supply of wheat or other ingredients. So this is maybe another point of thinking how to resolve and address the problem of scarcity in times of crisis. Yeah, that's all. Sister Loni, I don't know if she wants to manage the meeting to an end. Maybe Dr. Ildus has something to say, but I'm just willing to consider also the time. It's midnight there in Malaysia.
Yes, in Malaysia, midnight already.
Indonesia is 1 a.m. already, so I will try not to give more points.
Okay. I don't have any more question. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Jasmine, Dr. Zaid, and Dr. Ildus for very fruitful discussion, because this is my first time joining Maqasid Institute discussion. So I really appreciate, I really enjoy this discussion, even though in Malaysia right now, almost 1 a.m. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will be joining again for the forthcoming discussion, inshallah. Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful questions, actually, and also to Brother Fajri.
Welcome, most welcome.
Welcome.
Okay. All right. I need to go. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Let's.
If Dr. Loni is with us, or if she's not with us, maybe I will take over and thank everybody. Thank you, Dr. Ildus, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Dr. Zaid, for enriching the discourse. It is really indeed wonderful. And I believe may Allah guide us and help us to actualize all our aspirations, and bless you all and keep you all protected, and prepare for Ramadan that is coming soon.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.